I stood in the boardroom that Tuesday morning, my hands trembling slightly as I clicked to my final slide. 4 months of research, late nights, and missed dinners had led to this moment. The proposal glowed on the screen behind me, and I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted to escape. Graham Mercer, RCO, sat at the head of the table, his expensive watch catching the light as he tapped his fingers impatiently against the polished wood. I had practiced this pitch 100 times in front of my bathroom mirror, refining every word, anticipating every question, preparing for every possible objection. Now, standing before the company's entire leadership team, I felt the weight of everything I had sacrificed to get here pressing down on my shoulders. Before I could even reach my conclusion, before I could show them the projected returns and implementation timeline, Graham raised his hand and cut me off mid-sentence. A smirk spread across his face, the kind that made my stomach drop straight to the floor. He leaned back in his leather chair, looked around at the other executives with that self-satisfied expression, and said the words that would change everything. "This proposal is laughably unrealistic, Mara. Sit down before you embarrass the company any further." The room went completely silent. I felt my face burn hot as every pair of eyes turned toward me. My throat tightened, and for a moment I could not breathe properly. The air felt thick and suffocating. I wanted to defend myself, to explain the data behind every projection, to show them the research I had compiled from industry leaders and market trends, but my voice seemed trapped somewhere deep in my chest. Graham waved his hand dismissively, like he was shooing away an annoying insect that had wandered into his pristine office. I gathered my notes with shaking hands and returned to my seat at the far end of the table, trying desperately to keep my expression neutral, even though shame was flooding through me like ice water in my veins. The rest of the meeting blurred into background noise. People talked about quarterly targets and budget allocations and expansion plans, but I heard none of it. All I could focus on was the humiliation burning in my chest and the satisfied look on Graham's face as he dominated the conversation. After what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, he finally dismissed everyone. As people filed out, avoiding my gaze like I carried some contagious disease, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Graham pulled aside Marcus, one of the junior analysts, and whispered something to him while glancing at my abandoned presentation still glowing on the screen. The rest of that day felt like walking through thick fog. Co-workers who usually smiled at me in the hallway suddenly found their shoes incredibly interesting. Nobody mentioned the meeting. Nobody asked if I was okay. Nobody offered the kind of supportive words people usually share after someone gets humiliated. It was like I had become invisible overnight, a ghost haunting the office corridors without anyone acknowledging my presence. I tried to focus on my regular work, responding to emails and reviewing reports, but every time I looked at my computer screen, I saw Graham's smirk replaying in my mind like a cruel movie stuck on repeat. By late afternoon, I heard laughter coming from the conference room down the hall. Curious and suspicious, I walked past slowly, pretending to be heading to the printer. Through the glass walls, I could see Graham standing with Marcus, both of them looking at a presentation on the screen. My heart stopped completely. Those were my slides, my graphics, my research, my 4 months of work. They had just changed the color scheme from blue to green and rearranged a few sections to make it look different. Graham patted Marcus on the back like a proud father congratulating his son, while Marcus beamed with the kind of recognition I had been chasing for 3 years. The betrayal hit me harder than the humiliation had. I went home that night and sat in my dark apartment, staring at my phone without really seeing it. Part of me wanted to march back into that office and confront Graham, to demand answers and recognition, but I knew exactly how that would end. He had all the power. I had none. My phone buzzed suddenly, startling me out of my thoughts. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, thinking it was probably spam or a wrong number, but something made me open the message. It read, "Did you ever present that idea we talked about? L. Barrett, Verdant Systems." My breath caught in my throat. Liam Barrett. I had met him briefly at a conference 6 months ago, and we had talked for maybe 20 minutes about industry trends and emerging technologies. He had seemed genuinely interested in my perspective, which was rare in rooms full of people who usually talked over me or dismissed my contributions. I remembered mentioning I was working on a proposal for client retention through predictive analytics. He had called it brilliant and told me to reach out if I ever wanted to discuss it further. I never did. I had been too focused on impressing Graham, on proving myself worthy of recognition at my own company. Now I wondered if that had been a mistake. I stared at Liam's message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Replying felt dangerous, like crossing a line I could not uncross. Graham had made it very clear over the years that loyalty to the company meant loyalty to him personally. Reaching out to a competitor, even just to talk, could be seen as betrayal or corporate espionage. But then I thought about Marcus presenting my ideas as his own. I thought about Graham's smirk and his casual cruelty. I thought about 3 years of working 70-hour weeks, sacrificing friendships and sleep and any semblance of a personal life, all for a company that treated me like I was disposable. My hands stopped shaking. I typed back. Yes, I presented it. It did not go well. His response came within seconds, like he had been waiting. Can we talk? Tomorrow morning. Coffee. I agreed before I could second-guess myself or talk myself out of it. That night I barely slept. My mind raced with possibilities and fears and what-if scenarios. What did Liam want? Was this a trap somehow? Would Graham find out? But beneath the anxiety, something else stirred, something I had not felt in months. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a tiny spark of hope flickering in my chest. The coffee shop was small and warm, tucked into a quiet street far from my office building. Liam was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of him. He stood when he saw me, his smile genuine and open in a way I had almost forgotten existed in professional settings. We exchanged pleasantries about the weather and traffic, but he got to the point quickly. Graham shut it down, did he not? He asked, his eyes meeting mine directly. I froze, my coffee cup halfway to my lips. How did he know? How could he possibly know what had happened in that boardroom? Liam's expression darkened. Mara, I need to tell you something. Verdun invited you to pitch directly to our leadership team 6 weeks ago. We sent the invitation through your company's official channels, following all proper protocols. My heart started pounding. I never received any invitation. Nobody told me anything about Verdun reaching out. Liam nodded slowly, like he had expected that answer. We followed up twice. Each time Graham told us you were unavailable. He said you were overworked and inexperienced, and that he would handle any potential partnerships personally. The coffee shop seemed to tilt around me. Graham had blocked me. Deliberately. Systematically. He had not just stolen my work. He had cut off my opportunities before I even knew they existed. Liam leaned forward, his voice quiet but urgent. Mara, Verdun still wants to hear from you. Not from Graham. Not from your company. From you personally. I could barely process his words. My entire reality had just shifted beneath my feet. But I work for Graham's company. I have a contract and non-compete clauses. Would this not be a conflict of interest? Liam shook his head firmly. You are allowed to consult independently as long as you are not stealing proprietary information or trade secrets. We checked with our legal team before I contacted you. What you discussed at that conference was your original thinking, not company property. He slid a business card across the table. Come in tomorrow. Loan. Meet our team. Present your ideas. If nothing comes of it, at least you will know someone values your thinking. I took the card with trembling fingers. That afternoon, I returned to the office and opened a blank document. My hands shook as I typed my resignation letter, but my resolve did not waver. I had given this company everything I had, poured my heart and soul into work that mattered, and Graham had thrown it back in my face while taking credit for my ideas. I was done being invisible. I was done being used. I was done sacrificing myself for someone who would never appreciate it. Tomorrow I would step into the unknown and see what I could build on my own terms. Graham's office smelled like expensive leather and arrogance. I knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. He looked up from his computer, surprise flickering across his face before settling into annoyance. Mara, what do you want? I am busy. I placed the resignation letter on his desk, the paper crisp and final between us. For a moment, he just stared at it like it was written in a foreign language he could not quite understand. Then he laughed. Actually laughed, a sharp, ugly sound that made my skin crawl. You are not leaving, he said, pushing the letter back toward me like it was a joke. You are not built for anything bigger than this. You need me. You need this company. Where else would you go? I had prepared myself for this moment, rehearsed responses to every dismissive thing he might say. But standing there, looking at his smug face and remembering years of being undervalued, I realized I did not need a speech. I just needed to leave. Watch me, I said quietly and turned toward the door. Mara. His voice was cold now, all humor gone. I paused but did not turn around. No one in this industry will take you seriously without me. I will make sure of that. Have connections everywhere. I will blacklist you. I walked out without responding, leaving the door open behind me. Within 48 hours, I understood that Graham had not been bluffing about his threats. Word spread through my professional network like poison poured into clear water. Former colleagues stopped responding to my messages and emails. A mentor I had known for 5 years suddenly could not meet for lunch, claiming scheduling conflicts every time I reached out. Then came the internal memo that changed everything. A former coworker, someone who had always been kind to me, forwarded it with a simple message. You did not get this from me. Be careful. The memo was addressed to senior staff, marked confidential in red letters across the top. In carefully chosen words, Graham implied I had quit because I could not handle the pressure of senior-level responsibilities. He mentioned performance concerns and reliability issues, without ever making a direct accusation he could be held accountable for. It was character assassination disguised as professional communication. My hands shook with rage as I read it. He was trying to destroy my reputation before I even had a chance to build something new. But I refused to let him win. I had a meeting with Verdant tomorrow, and I would prove that my ideas could stand on their own, without Graham's name or approval attached to them. I would show everyone what I was truly capable of. Verdant's office building was all glass and light, completely different from the dark, traditional space I had left behind. The receptionist smiled warmly when I entered and offered me water without me having to ask. People made eye contact in the hallways. It felt like stepping into an alternate reality where I was actually visible, where my presence mattered. Liam met me in the lobby and led me upstairs to a bright conference room with windows overlooking the city. Just be yourself, he said, squeezing my shoulder reassuringly. Show us what you wanted to build. So I did. For 45 minutes, I talked about predictive analytics for client retention, about using behavioral data to anticipate needs before clients even recognize them themselves. I showed them the framework I had developed over months of research, the one Graham had called laughably unrealistic. Nobody interrupted me. Nobody smirked. Nobody checked their phone or whispered to their neighbor. When I finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then questions came, thoughtful ones that showed they had actually been listening and engaging with my ideas. We discussed implementation challenges, scalability issues, integration with existing systems. It felt like a real conversation between equals, not a performance where I had to prove my worth. Just as we were wrapping up, the door opened and a tall woman with silver hair entered. Sorry I am late, she said, extending her hand to me. Patricia Wells, CEO of Verdant Systems. Patricia sat down and asked me to walk her through the core concept again from the beginning. I did, more nervous now but also energized by her attention and the intelligent questions she asked. When I finished, she exchanged a look with Liam that I could not quite read. This could work, Patricia said finally, leaning back in her chair. This could actually transform how we approach client relationships across all our divisions. She turned to Liam. What would it take to pilot this? What kind of timeline and resources are we looking at? Over the next hour, they talked numbers and timelines while I sat there trying to process what was happening. They discussed budget allocations, team structures, and integration points with their existing technology infrastructure. Finally, Patricia turned back to me with an expression I could not quite interpret. "Mara, we would like to offer you a consulting contract to develop this program for Verdant. Initial project value is $1 million, with potential for expansion if the pilot succeeds." $1 million. The number hung in the air between us like something unreal, like a figure from a dream. I had never handled anything close to that scale. "You would have full creative control," Liam added. "Your name on everything. Team. Your vision. Complete ownership of the project." I left Verdant's office 2 hours later with a contract draft in my bag and a head spinning with possibilities and fears. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and twice as many text messages. Word had gotten out somehow. Someone at Verdant must have mentioned the partnership discussions, and somehow it had reached my old company faster than I expected. Graham knew. The messages ranged from former co-workers congratulating me to warnings that Graham was furious and making threats. One message stopped me cold. It was from Kyle, a quiet guy from accounting who had been laid off 6 months ago under mysterious circumstances. "Call me. You need to hear this. It is important." I called immediately, my heart pounding. Kyle's voice was shaky but determined when he answered. "Mara, when I worked there, Graham took credit for a cost-saving system I developed. When I asked to be recognized for it, he laid me off 2 weeks later and told everyone it was budget cuts." My stomach turned. "Kyle, I am so sorry. I had no idea that happened to you. That is not why I am calling." Kept files. Documentation showing patterns of Graham inflating numbers in reports to clients. Nothing illegal but definitely dishonest. If Verdant is working with you, they should know what kind of person they almost partnered with. He paused, and I could hear him breathing heavily. "I can send you everything. All the proof." My hand tightened on the phone as I considered what this meant. I spent the entire weekend reviewing Kyle's files, barely sleeping or eating. Page after page of financial inconsistencies, exaggerated projections, and carefully hidden cost overruns filled my screen. Graham had been playing a dangerous game for years, presenting his company as more successful than it actually was to win contracts and impress investors. But I faced a difficult choice that kept me up both nights. I could use this information to sabotage Graham's reputation, to get revenge for everything he had done to me and Kyle and probably countless others. It would be easy. It would feel good in the moment. But it would also make me exactly like him, someone who used underhanded tactics to win. Instead, I worked on my proposal for Verdant, using Kyle's insights to strengthen my approach without ever directly attacking Graham's company. I focused on building something stable and honest, a program that did not rely on inflated promises or hidden risks. I emphasized transparency, realistic timelines, and sustainable growth. On Monday morning, I sent Verdant my refined proposal. The response came within an hour, faster than I expected. "Can you present this to our full leadership team tomorrow morning? We want to move quickly on this." My heart raced as I typed back yes. This was it. The real test. Tomorrow would determine if I had actually built something valuable or if I had just been lucky so far. The presentation room at Verdant was packed with people. Patricia sat in the center, flanked by 6 other executives I had not met before. I set up my materials with steady hands, refusing to let nervousness show on my face. Then I delivered the pitch of my life. I walked them through every element of the predictive analytics system, demonstrating how it would integrate with their existing infrastructure without disrupting current operations. I showed projected return on investment, implementation timelines broken down by quarter, and risk mitigation strategies for every potential obstacle I could anticipate. I answered every question with clarity and confidence, drawing on months of research and preparation. When I finished, the room fell silent for what felt like an eternity. Patricia finally spoke, her voice measured and thoughtful. "This is the most grounded, scalable plan we have seen in 5 years. Relief flooded through me, so intense I almost felt dizzy. We discussed next steps for 20 minutes, talking about team composition and milestone deliverables. Then I gathered my materials and headed for the elevator, my chest swelling with something that felt dangerously close to hope. The elevator doors opened on the ground floor, and I stepped into the lobby, already thinking about next steps. Then I froze completely. Graham stood near the entrance, straightening his tie and checking his reflection in the glass. He was here. Verdant. And he had not seen me yet. I tried to slip past Graham without being noticed, keeping my head down and walking quickly toward the exit. But he turned at just the wrong moment and our eyes met across the lobby. His expression shifted from surprise to anger in an instant, his face flushing red. He walked toward me quickly, his jaw tight and his hands clenched at his sides. "I know what you are doing," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You think you can steal my clients. Verdant will choose us. They always have. We have history together." People in the lobby were starting to notice the confrontation. A security guard near the desk glanced our way, his hand moving toward his radio. I kept my voice calm and quiet, refusing to be drawn into a scene. "I am not stealing anything, Graham. I am building something new on my own." Graham stepped closer, invading my personal space in a way that made my skin crawl. "You are consulting out of your living room. You are nobody, Mara. Just another freelancer who will be forgotten in 6 months. Verdant will realize that soon enough." He looked me up and down with contempt. "If you cost me this deal, you will regret it for the rest of your career. I will make sure every company in this industry knows what kind of person you really are. I will destroy you." Then he turned and walked toward the elevators, leaving me standing in the lobby with my heart pounding and my hands clenched into fists. But beneath the fear, I felt something else growing stronger. Determination. 3 days later I got a call from Liam. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "Did you know Graham's company submitted inflated performance numbers in their previous reports to us?" My stomach dropped like a stone. "No. I did not share anything about his company with you. I swear I kept everything focused on my own proposal." "I believe you," Liam said quickly. "Our compliance team does routine audits on all major partnerships as standard procedure. They found inconsistencies going back 2 years. Nothing criminal, but enough that we cannot trust his numbers or his integrity." I heard him exhale slowly. "We have frozen all negotiations with his company pending a full review." I sat down heavily on my couch, my mind racing through implications. Graham had sabotaged himself. His dishonesty had finally caught up with him, and I had nothing to do with it. His own choices had destroyed his chances. "Mara, can you come back in today? We need to move forward with your proposal, and we want to finalize everything this week." That afternoon, I returned to Verdant and spent 10 hours straight refining the implementation plan with their technical team. We mapped out every phase in detail, identified potential obstacles before they could become problems, and built contingency plans for different scenarios. It was exhausting and exhilarating at the same time. When I finally left that night, my eyes were burning, but I felt more alive than I had in years. Word of Verdant's decision reached my old company before any official announcement went public. I know because Carl texted me a photo that night that made my blood run cold. It showed Graham in his office, his fist having just punched a hole in the drywall, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. The message read, "He just called an emergency staff meeting, blaming you for everything." I stared at the photo, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. I had never wanted to destroy Graham or ruin his company. I had just wanted to build something of my own to be recognized for my work. But he had made this personal, and now he was facing consequences he had created himself through years of dishonest practices. The next morning, I woke to messages from 3 former co-workers. They all said versions of the same thing. Graham had held a meeting claiming I had sabotaged the company, that I had stolen proprietary information and fed it to competitors to hurt him personally. Some people believed him, apparently. But several employees had walked out of the meeting in disgust, tired of his lies and manipulation. One of the messages came from Marcus, the junior analyst who had presented my ideas as his own weeks ago. I am sorry, Mara. I did not know he was stealing your work. He told me you had abandoned the project and that he needed someone to salvage it. I should have questioned him. I feel terrible about what happened. Verdant's board meeting was scheduled for Wednesday afternoon. Liam warned me they would be discussing both proposals, mine and Graham's company, despite the frozen negotiations and compliance issues. Some board members have worked with Graham's firm for years, Liam explained over the phone, his voice concerned. They love your proposal, but they worry you are just one person. His company has resources, infrastructure, a full team. They are concerned about capacity and sustainability. My heart sank. After everything I had been through, all the work and risk and rebuilding, I might still lose to Graham simply because he had a bigger company behind him. The size and appearance of stability might trump the quality of ideas. That night I could not sleep at all. I paced my small apartment, reviewing the proposal again and again, looking for weaknesses or gaps in my arguments. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a new message. Marcus again. Can we talk? It is important. I know something you need to know. We met for coffee very early the next morning, before the sun had fully risen. Marcus looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes like he had not slept in days. Graham is planning to undercut your pricing tomorrow, he said quietly, glancing around like he was afraid of being overheard. He is going to offer Verdant a lower rate and promise faster implementation, even though we both know he cannot deliver on those promises. My chest tightened. Why are you telling me this? Why risk your job? Marcus looked down at his coffee cup, shame written across his face. Because I am tired of being part of something dishonest. And because you deserve to win this. You always did. I called Liam immediately after leaving the coffee shop, my mind racing. I need to assemble a team before the board meeting tomorrow. There was a pause on the other end. That is in 6 hours, Mara. How can you possibly put together a team that fast? I know it sounds impossible, but I have people who want to help, people who believe in this project. Over the next few hours, I made calls to people I trusted. Kyle agreed to consult on financial projections and help build realistic budgets. Marcus offered to help with technical documentation, despite the risk to his current job if Graham found out. 2 other former co-workers, both talented analysts who had been sidelined by Graham over the years, said yes without hesitation. By early afternoon, I had assembled a small but skilled team. We worked frantically to update the proposal, adding detailed staffing plans and expanded timelines that showed how we could scale the project. When we finished, the proposal was stronger than anything I could have built alone. At 5 p.m., I stood in Verdant's boardroom facing 12 executives. This time I was not alone. My team sat behind me, ready to answer questions in their areas of expertise. I presented our refined proposal, and my team supported every claim with data and detailed analysis. The questions came hard and fast, but we handled each one with confidence. The board deliberated for 45 minutes while we waited outside in the hallway. It felt like hours, like time had stretched into something elastic and cruel. I paced while my team sat quietly, everyone lost in their own thoughts and fears. Finally, Patricia emerged and invited us back inside. The board has made a decision, she said, her expression unreadable. My heart pounded so hard I thought everyone in the room could hear it. We are moving forward exclusively with Mara's proposal. $1 million initial contract, with partnership options for future expansion based on performance milestones. The room erupted in smiles and handshakes. My team hugged each other, laughing with relief and joy. I stood there trying to process that this was real, that I had actually won, that months of work and risk had paid off. Patricia pulled me aside as the celebration continued around us. We chose your proposal not just because it was good, but because it was honest, she said quietly. That matters more than anything else in business. We can teach skills, but we cannot teach integrity. Walking out of Verdant that evening with my new team, the city lights reflecting off glass buildings and the air cool on my face, I felt something I had not felt in years. Pride. Not the desperate, approval-seeking kind I had chased at Graham's company. Real pride in work I owned, in a team I had chosen, in success I had earned through my own merit. Graham heard about the announcement before it went public. I know because that night my phone rang at 11 p.m. His name appeared on the screen, glowing in the darkness of my bedroom. I let it ring until voicemail picked up. He called again within minutes. And again. On the fourth call he left a voicemail. I listened to it the next morning while drinking coffee. His voice was thin, stripped of its usual arrogance and authority. Mara, please. I know things got heated between us. I know I made mistakes. But we can work this out. Verdant made a mistake choosing you. They need a real company with proven track record, not a freelancer. You can fix this. There was a pause, heavy breathing. Please call me back. We can find a solution that works for everyone. I deleted the voicemail without responding. The public announcement went live on Friday morning. Verdant issued a press release highlighting the new partnership and mentioning me by name as the lead consultant and project architect. Within hours, my LinkedIn profile exploded with connection requests and congratulatory messages from people across the industry. But the real impact showed up at Graham's company. His biggest client, reading about Verdant's shift away from his firm, started asking questions about why they had passed on his proposal. Doubts spread quickly in industries built on reputation and trust. By afternoon, 2 more of his clients had requested meetings to discuss concerns about strategic direction. The regulatory audit hit Graham's company the following week like a bomb. Verdant, as part of their standard due diligence for all potential partners, had requested an independent review of financial practices for both finalists. What they found in Graham's company was not criminal, but it was deeply damaging to his reputation. Inflated performance metrics in client reports, selective reporting of project failures, and several instances of taking credit for employee work without proper documentation or compensation. The audit report made its way to Graham's board of directors within days. By Wednesday afternoon, Graham had been placed on temporary administrative leave pending a full internal investigation. His assistant called me that day, her voice shaky and uncertain. Mara, Graham wants to speak with you. He says it is urgent and important. I asked what it was about, keeping my voice neutral. He would not say. But please, he is asking for your help specifically. He said you are the only one who can help him now. I told her I would think about it and hung up. That evening Marcus sent me a message with more details. Graham had been ordered to cooperate fully with the investigation, and he was not handling the pressure well. Several senior employees had submitted formal complaints about his management practices, and the board was taking them seriously. The company I had worked for was unraveling, and Graham was at the center of the collapse. Graham called again late that night, after midnight when most people are asleep. This time his voicemail was different. Desperate in a way that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. I made mistakes. I see that now. I should have valued you. I should have listened. But Verdant listened to you. The board respects you. You could talk to them, explain that the audit is an overreaction, that these are just industry practices. His voice cracked. Please, Mara. I will give you anything. A senior position in my company with full equity, whatever salary you want, complete creative control. Just come back and help me fix this mess. I sat in my dark apartment, listening to his message 3 times. Part of me, a very small part, felt something like pity, but mostly I felt nothing at all. He had created this situation through years of dishonest decisions and treating people like disposable resources. I had not caused his downfall. I had simply stopped being the person who held everything together while he took credit and collected rewards. The next morning Graham called again. This time I answered. He started talking immediately, words tumbling out in a panicked rush. Apologies mixed with excuses, mixed with promises of how things would be different if I came back. I waited patiently until he ran out of breath, until the silence on the line grew heavy and uncomfortable. Then I spoke, my voice calm and measured. Graham, I said quietly, cutting through his desperate rambling. He went silent immediately. You dismissed my proposal in front of the entire leadership team. You called it laughably unrealistic. You told me to sit down before I embarrassed the company. My voice was steady, calm, free of anger. So I built something without you. Something real. Something honest. Something that works. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. I do not owe you my help. I do not owe you my time. You made it very clear what you thought I was worth when you had power over me. He started to speak, but I continued. I hope you learn from this. I genuinely hope you become a better leader and a better person. But that journey is yours, not mine. I cannot save you from consequences you created. There was a long pause filled only with static. Then Graham whispered, barely audible. Please, Mara. Do not do this to me. I felt no satisfaction in his pain. But I also felt no obligation to rescue him from himself. Goodbye, Graham. I wish you well, but I am moving forward now. I ended the call and immediately blocked his number. It was done. Not with anger or revenge, but with simple finality. I had spent 3 years seeking his approval, believing his validation would make me complete and successful. Now I understood that the only approval I needed was my own, and the only validation that mattered came from doing good work with integrity. The press event took place on a bright Thursday morning 2 weeks later. Verdant had rented a beautiful space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Reporters filled the seats, cameras ready, notepads open. Patricia spoke first, explaining Verdant's new direction in client analytics and why this partnership represented the future of their company. Then she introduced me. I walked to the podium with my team standing beside me, a visible show of support. Kyle, Marcus, and the others who had taken a risk to build something honest together. I talked about the project, about innovation, about the importance of valuing people's ideas regardless of their title or position in a corporate hierarchy. Flashbulbs went off. Reporters took notes and asked intelligent questions. When I finished, the applause felt genuine and warm, not the polite courtesy clapping of obligation. Afterward, walking out into the sunlight, I checked my phone. Messages flooded in from people congratulating me, from former colleagues saying they wished they had stood up to Graham sooner, from strangers offering opportunities and collaborations. One message caught my eye. It was from the board of Graham's company, now officially announcing his permanent removal as CEO. I closed the message without reading the full details. That chapter of my life was over, completely and finally. I had a project to launch, a team to lead, and a future built entirely on my own terms. No more invisible work. No more stolen credit. Just me, finally seen for who I truly was and what I could build.